Here's what everyone needs to understand. When military aircraft deliberately cross into another nation's sovereign airspace without permission, it's not just a simple navigation error. It's a calculated power move that could spark international conflict. On Friday morning, the small Baltic nation of Estonia found itself at the center of what officials are calling an extraordinarily audacious aerial transgression by Russian forces. But here's where it gets controversial. Was this really just another routine testing of NATO's defenses, or something far more deliberate and dangerous? 3 Russian MiG-31 interceptor aircraft. These are serious, high-speed military jets designed for air superiority, brazenly crossed into Estonian territory and remained there for a full 12 minutes. To put this in perspective for those unfamiliar with military protocols, 12 minutes is an eternity in aviation terms. Commercial flights file detailed flight plans hours in advance, and military aircraft operating near international borders typically maintain constant communication with air traffic controllers to avoid exactly this type of incident. But these Russian jets, they operated like ghosts in the sky. Estonian authorities revealed that the aircraft had no filed flight plans whatsoever. Their identification transponders were deliberately switched off, and they maintained radio silence with air traffic control throughout the entire violation. For aviation experts, this behavior screams intentional provocation rather than accidental border crossing. The incursion occurred near Vaindloo Island, situated roughly 100 kilometers from Estonia's capital city of Tallinn. While Russian aircraft have previously made brief appearances in this area, Friday's extended presence represents an unprecedented escalation in both duration and boldness. Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna didn't mince words when addressing the violation. He emphasized that Russia has already violated Estonian airspace 4 separate times during this year alone, a pattern that he described as completely unacceptable. However, Friday's incident involving 3 fighter jets simultaneously represents what he characterized as an unprecedentedly brazen escalation. Russia's continuously escalating border testing and increasing aggressiveness demands an immediate response through rapidly intensified political and economic pressure, Tsahkna declared, signaling Estonia's growing frustration with Moscow's provocative behavior. And this is the part most people miss. The timing of this incident is absolutely critical to understanding its significance. The airspace violation occurred just over 1 week following a separate incident where more than 20 Russian drones penetrated Polish airspace during the night of September 9th to 10th. That incident forced NATO fighter jets to engage and destroy several of the unmanned aircraft, marking the first time a NATO member had to fire weapons during the ongoing conflict. Western intelligence officials interpreted that drone incursion as Russia deliberately testing the alliance's preparedness and determination to respond. Friday's incident also came merely 3 days after Russian and Belarusian military forces concluded their joint military exercises, ominously named Zapad 2025. The timing suggests these airspace violations might be part of a broader pattern of Russian military testing along NATO's eastern boundaries. NATO's response was swift and decisive. Alliance aircraft immediately scrambled to intercept the Russian jets, with Italian F-35 Lightning II fighters ultimately forcing the MiG-31s to retreat after they had penetrated approximately 5 nautical miles, roughly 9 kilometers, into NATO-protected airspace. A NATO spokesperson confirmed the organization's rapid response capabilities, stating, "Earlier today, Russian jets violated Estonian airspace. NATO responded immediately and intercepted the Russian aircraft. This represents yet another example of reckless Russian behavior and NATO's ability to respond effectively. But here's where the situation becomes even more intriguing and potentially explosive. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas made a particularly pointed observation about the incident. This was no accident. Her statement reflects what many Western officials privately believe, but rarely state so directly, that Russia's recent pattern of airspace violations represents calculated psychological warfare rather than navigational mishaps. Estonia has already summoned the highest-ranking Russian diplomat in the country to deliver a formal protest and official diplomatic note regarding the violation. However, government sources suggest they're considering escalating the matter further by invoking Article 4 of NATO's founding treaty. For those unfamiliar with NATO's structure, Article 4 allows any member nation to request immediate consultations with all alliance partners whenever they believe their territorial integrity, political independence, or security faces threats. While less severe than Article 5, which triggers collective defense, Article 4 consultations signal serious concern and often lead to coordinated alliance responses. A senior U.S. official, speaking anonymously due to the sensitive nature of the situation, expressed skepticism about any innocent explanation for the incident. It's extremely difficult to envision how this wasn't completely intentional, the official noted, emphasizing that multiple military aircraft cannot remain unaware of their location for 12 continuous minutes without deliberate intent. The official added that while deeper intelligence assessments continue, the circumstances strongly suggest purposeful provocation rather than accidental border crossing. Jakub M. Godzimirski, a research professor specializing in Russian security policy at Norway's Institute of International Affairs, offered a more nuanced perspective. While acknowledging the incident could represent deliberate testing, he suggested it might also be coincidental. However, he emphasized the importance of viewing Friday's violation within the broader context of recent Russian provocations, particularly the drone incursions into Polish territory. Russian military aircraft routinely traverse the Baltic Sea region, flying between mainland Russia and Kaliningrad, Russia's heavily militarized exclave wedged between Poland and Lithuania, where the Baltic Fleet maintains its headquarters. These flight paths often bring Russian aircraft close to NATO airspace. But Friday's extended penetration far exceeded normal operational boundaries. This incident also recalls a previous confrontation from May, when Estonia reported that Moscow had briefly sent a fighter jet into NATO airspace during an attempt to intercept a Russian-bound oil tanker. Estonian authorities believed the vessel was part of Russia's Shadow Fleet, a network of ships attempting to circumvent Western sanctions by transporting Russian oil through deceptive practices. The Russian Defense Ministry has not yet responded to requests for comment regarding Friday's airspace violation, maintaining their typical silence when confronted with evidence of provocative military actions. So here's the million-dollar question that everyone should be asking. Are we witnessing Russia systematically testing NATO's resolve and response capabilities in preparation for something larger? Or are these isolated incidents designed primarily for domestic propaganda and regional intimidation? The pattern certainly suggests escalation, from brief border crossings to extended airspace violations, from single aircraft to multiple fighter jets, from remote areas to increasingly brazen incursions near major population centers. But what's your take on this? Do you believe Russia is deliberately probing for weaknesses in NATO's eastern defenses? Or are these incidents simply the inevitable result of increased military tensions in the region? And perhaps more importantly, how should NATO respond to prevent these provocations from spiraling into something far more dangerous? Share your thoughts, because this conversation about European security affects all of us, regardless of where we live. Are we looking at calculated brinkmanship? Or are we witnessing the early warning signs of a much larger conflict brewing on NATO's doorstep?